LeBron went to 8 straight finals, but the Eastern Conference was a joke. Former Cavs GM spills the truth about his easy path to glory.
What's your assessment of the current state of the Cavs?
Well, one of the things that we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. And all through those years, we really knew the target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to be in the way.
Yeah, right. The East was the LeBron Invitational for all of those years.
That now.
David Griffin just shredded LeBron James's legacy in one interview. The former Cavaliers GM, who won a title with LeBron, revealed the Eastern Conference was so weak they barely even cared about the regular season. 8 straight finals look impressive, until you realize LeBron faced just one All-NBA first-team player in all 8 years. The real story behind those finals runs? Finally exposed by someone who was actually there.
LeBron James is a fraud. LeBron James, once again, proves that he's a pat-standing clown and should never again ever be mentioned in the same breath as the greats who have ever played this great game that we call National Basketball Association basketball.
Do LeBron's 8 straight finals still look impressive, knowing the Eastern Conference was historically weak? Or does this prove he took the easiest path to glory? Drop your take below.
David Griffin was the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers throughout the whole stay, the second stint of LeBron James in Cleveland, when he came back from Miami up until the time that he left to the Lakers. Now, he's being asked about the current Cleveland Cavaliers team and, to acknowledge them and how great they are and all that other stuff. But during the answer to that question, he started talking about those years of the second stay of LeBron James and how lucky they were because the Eastern Conference was probably the easiest Eastern Conference in the history of the NBA.
Let's start with exactly what David Griffin said, because this comes from someone who actually worked directly with LeBron James. This isn't a hater or a casual fan. It's a GM who helped build the 2016 Cavs championship team. When Griffin talks about LeBron's finals runs, he's speaking from firsthand experience. Griffin said, "One of the things we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. All through those years, we really knew the target was the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to beat us." Read that again. The GM is admitting that for 8 straight years, the Cavs knew before the season even started that nobody in the East could stop them. Playoffs? Not a worry. The only real test was whoever came out of the Western Conference. Griffin added, "The East was the LeBron Invitational for all of those years." That's not my phrase. Not some YouTube commentator. That's LeBron's own GM calling the Eastern Conference playoffs a mere formality, an invitational. Basically, showing up was enough to make it to the finals.
I think what ended up happening ultimately along the way was it changed our perspective to such a degree that you saw us. Even the first year we were together, I think we were 19-20 in our first 39 games, and then we run off this historic run in the second half of the season. But guys weren't taking the season seriously.
But it gets worse. Griffin compared those LeBron years to the current Cavs with Donovan Mitchell. What they're doing is going to be more impressive when they achieve what they're capable of. The Eastern Conference is significantly more competitive than what we had. Let that sink in. The GM who built a championship team with LeBron is saying that a completely different Cavs team reaching the finals now would be more impressive than LeBron's 8 straight runs, because the East actually has real competition today. Griffin even admitted that LeBron's teams didn't take the regular season seriously. One year, they went 19-20 in their first 39 games. Why? They knew nobody in the East could beat them. The regular season wasn't about wins. It was just practice for the finals.
A violation. So they'll do it again.
In those plays, and that was on LeBron James, those plays often go unnoticed. He makes this shot. People will forget about it. These are the type of plays in this tight of series that can make the difference between winning or losing.
Let's get into the numbers. They're brutal for LeBron's legacy. During those 8 straight finals runs, LeBron faced just one All-NBA first-team player. 1 in 8 years. That's not exaggeration. That's reality. The Eastern Conference was so weak, the Atlanta Hawks once had 4 All-Stars, including Kyle Korver, a 34-year-old spot-up shooter who couldn't create his own shot. That was considered elite competition. Even Paul Gasol was an East All-Star while playing for the Chicago Bulls. Hardly memorable. That's how thin the talent was. The East was so diluted that washed-up veterans from better days were representing the conference. LeBron's dynasty faced opponents so forgettable, it barely counts as a test.
There was no part of me that believed we were losing. And it was one of those things that I just believed to the core of me, but it was because I felt like the only way we could win was to dig the hole we dug. That group needed it to be like that.
That's wild, isn't it?
For whatever reason, they were so spoiled by success and needed it to be so damn difficult. They put themselves in a position that only they could overcome. But that was the greatness of that group. They lived for make it messy.
The Western Conference was on a whole different level. The All-Star games were blowouts every single year. The West would destroy the East, and everyone could see the talent gap. It got so embarrassing that the league had to change the format completely. That's when we got Team LeBron versus Team Curry, because East versus West just kept exposing how weak LeBron's conference really was.
What Ty Lue did at halftime to challenge LeBron, there's going to be a 30 for 30 on that moment and what it really did to LeBron. He was the best of his angels that second half in a way that he couldn't have been without Ty Lue. And Ty knew it. And to have the gift he had at that moment for handling that situation. And then for our locker room to deal with Ty Lue going at him the way they did and to redirect LeBron to get the benefit out of it, that's a James Jones thing. That's a Channing Frye thing. That's an RJ thing. That's a J.R. Smith thing. That's a, look, man, is he right?
Let's compare LeBron's playoff runs to other all-time greats. Michael Jordan beat 20 teams with 50-plus wins in his career. Kobe Bryant beat 26, still the record. LeBron? He's been in the league longer than the total number of 50-win teams he's defeated in the playoffs. Not a typo. Kobe is the only player ever to beat 4 50-win teams on the way to a championship, and he did it without a top 75 all-time teammate. LeBron has never beaten 4 50-win teams in a single playoff run, simply because the Eastern Conference didn't have them. During his 8-year final streak, the East might have had 2 or 3 50-win teams in a good year, while in the West, 50 wins barely got you into the playoffs. The 8th seed in the West would have been a top 3 seed in the East. That's the gap that Griffin's admission confirms what critics have said for years. LeBron chose the path of least resistance. He went to Miami when the East was weak. When that fell apart, he returned to Cleveland because the East was still weak. He could coast to the finals without facing real competition until June. The stats show it worked. LeBron's Eastern Conference playoff performances were far better than his finals performances against West contenders. Why? Because he faced inferior competition for 3 rounds before finally meeting a true test. Look at who he was actually playing in those East playoffs, and the picture becomes clear. Derrick Rose, 1 ACL and 1 meniscus. The Indiana Pacers, Paul George and not much else. The Toronto Raptors, famous for choking in the playoffs. The Boston Celtics, an aging core. These weren't legitimate championship contenders. They were good regular season teams that crumbled against real stars. Griffin even admitted that when Toronto beat them one year, it had as much to do with the city and crowd energy as the team itself. That's how weak the competition was that a decent crowd was considered a threat to LeBron's finals run. The East's second-best team every year became a meme. Fodder for jokes about getting swept or gentlemen swept by LeBron. It wasn't competitive, it was a formality. Everyone knew LeBron was going to the finals. The only question, how many games would his opponent manage to win? This context completely changes how we should view LeBron's finals record. Yes, he went to 8 straight finals, but he also went 3-5 in those finals against actual competition. Hit like and subscribe for more reality checks.